All right, hello everyone. We are back for another Tour 9 guide here with tips and tricks for getting through some of these holes. What I'm trying to do is collect a bunch of different wins for you guys and get them dumped into particular folders. Here, this is a very similar win to what we had earlier. This is the second time I'm seeing a very similar win to this. And the way that I typically play headwinds is, well, first off, I like to, with Tour 9, 10, and 11, and that's kind of the way that I'm going to be teaching, I like to use, katanas, kingmakers, and then kind of as a last resort, a Titan ball. I like to prioritize side spin to distance, and as you can see, with a lot of the holes, especially if you check out a lot of my content, a lot of the drives are layups. So, not really the, death of you if you are, lacking a little bit of length in this tour. It's not going to make or break you. So what you're going to see me do, I'm going to pull off just a little bit of the distance just so I can kind of have a little bit of precision. Now, I usually use 1.7 per ring on a Thor's hammer. I'm going to use more like 1.5 when I'm going into power. So here I might go 8-9 rings, somewhere in there, and then just kind of go at this a little bit straight up. It has plenty of side spin. Keep note that I am also kind of laying off of this a little bit, and that one ring pull might end up pushing it into the rough, but hopefully if you have a little bit of accuracy, it's going to pull it into the rough, and with your top spin, it's going to top spin out. The only way that you're going to wind up in the bunkers would be, if you really hit a really big pull or don't have proper wind play. So, me going about 9 rings there, it's going to be very spot on for an adjustment, and it's going to keep me out of trouble with some real good precision. And notice how, I didn't start my adjustment at max power. I came back in so I could be a little bit more precise with the way that I was playing the rings. So keep that tip in mind. It's going to make estimating how many rings you need to go a lot easier off the tee. Because for those side winds, you can't just count, 12 rings over, or unless it's a perfect side wind. So it's like you have to figure out an estimation technique, and that's kind of, the best way that I know to kind of estimate those. And let's get underway here with, you can see I'm kind of at a min distance Goliath here. I'm going to come at it with a little bit of curl. I'm also going to barely try to creep it onto the green, kind of like this, and just let it kind of roll out. In terms of min club, Goliath for me is about 2 per ring, or so, 2.5 per ring, sorry. And so I'm going to try to play a little bit of accordingly and just kind of over curl just slightly, just to kind of get that extra momentum shooting over towards the hole. And let's see, almost got it. So I just needed just a tiny bit extra curl. And you just have to have, kind of a little bit of creativity when you're thinking about these shots and kind of drumming them up in your head. Keep in mind that the ball's coming in left or right, so it's going to automatically kind of like deviate from that curl, that ball trail that you see. And I'm just trying to estimate how much extra curl I'm going to need on top of that. And I almost had it there. You can see, if you're precise with the way that you play the rings and can kind of hone in on that landing zone and kind of really tackle that. And then additionally, it's just trying to kind of visualize what you need to do with the ball outside of landing it on that spot. And you could see with the way that I was setting up there that it was going to stay out to the left. Even with the amount of left to right the wind was, I was assuming, just from experience, that it's not going to break enough to get over to the hole. I'm going to have to provide a little bit of extra curl to get it to kind of go on line there. And here we are, very interesting win. This is going to be a very challenging win, so I'm glad that we got this. I might even need to go into some power here if I choose to do a 3-wood. Now, there is an alternate driver method that we could potentially go for as well. And the method that you use to go at this, especially if you're going second, you know, you might want to think about where your opponent is. And apparently my opponent went to go grab lunch instead of play the shootouts, so this might go in the water. We'll see. Well, no, it probably won't go in the water, but if you see your opponent, you know, for example, my opponent's in this bunker. He's 30 yards from the hole, so you might want to go with this backspin driver as opposed to doing the hop shot. So I'm going to teach you this shot as long as my opponent doesn't forfeit, and I'm going to try to do it with more. So this is more spin that your Thor 2 through 5 would have. I'm not going to go beyond that because it would be unfair for the video. So keep in mind, you know, I am more than likely going to go long on this shot. If I want to pull it in and actually do it proper, I'll land more over here because it's a little bit shorter. And the way that I'm going to go about doing this is in terms of rings. I might go about 9 rings here for an adjustment. A little bit of an overplay because it is downwind. And notice how I'm doing it with curl to kind of counter curl it back to the hole. And I'm just being a little bit cautious. And you see it's just coming in a little bit deep, but it's not going to, you know, and I could land very tight on that fairway's edge, rough edge. And, you know, it's all about just kind of playing the shot to kind of pick up the wind. We can get that in there pretty tight. With that method, we can, when it's a very high wind like that, if I played it a little bit tighter to the rough edge, I just wanted to be a little bit safe. So you saw me play a little bit more, 1 per ring, at least 8 or 9 rings for that wind, just to be safe because I know where my opponent is. So, you know, it's about sometimes being smart, strategic, and, you know, this is another good reason to have Thor's hammer on. It's just another dimension. If your opponent goes in the water for some reason on that hole or whatever, you know, of course, one of the things that you can do is just roll it off the tee box if your opponent's in the water. But, you know, thinking outside the box and kind of trying to improve your game as opposed to, you know, you could try something a little bit more creative like what I just did there. And like I said, you know, if I got really aggressive and tried to land right on that fairway edge there, I can get it very close to the hole. I was just playing, you know, more smart, a little bit more safe because I know where my opponent is. So it's just kind of strategical thinking. You just want to pull it up, you know, for just rings that, you know, you might just, you know, an extra 4 rings is about what I did. You know, first off, I started it probably about 2 rings up from the fairway's edge, and then I went in an additional 2 rings more than I needed to. You know, I probably only need about a 7 ring adjustment there, 1.5 per ring, or maybe 1.4 per ring. So if your max is usually at 1.7, you know, you might want to play a 1.5 on that downwind into the wind shot. So, you know, for a 9 win, for example, 6 rings is probably virtually spot on. And what you saw me do is a little bit closer to 8, just to be a little bit on the safe side. So good luck with that hole, and be on the lookout for more tips and tricks to come.